Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Did they just change their logo here? Because I'm never going to be able to find that now when I'm searching my tabs. Like, where the heck is it? Great. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. For the most part today, I don't think we're going to be doing any kind of deep divey stuff. We're not going to go part two into the Brian Gutekunst thing, at least not yet. Just because there's enough stuff here as I was going through and grabbing all the things and the things that I haven't talked about yet and all that. I think there's a lot we have to kind of get caught up on. And so we'll focus on more deep divey stuff, maybe tomorrow, the next day, whatever. Tomorrow, probably not because, well, one of the news items I was going to say for later, Brian Gutekunst is speaking today for you on the 4th of February at, I think, 12:30? 12:30 p.m., presumably that's Central Time. So, depending on how much he has to say or whatever, we'll be spending a decent amount of time on that. Although it wouldn't be a terrible parlay into part two of evaluating the guy we just listened to. Okie dokie. First and foremost, thank you very much to Jerome for signing up on Patreon. Really appreciate you, dude. And hopefully you're getting some value out of the cool stuff we've been posting recently. When I say we, part of it is just a podcasty vernacular thing. The other part of me saying we is me and freaking AI, which is getting crazy, by the way. I don't know. I know you guys know I'm like an AI person, but it's gotten pretty ridiculous with the biggest thing that's popped up recently is, what is it called? Moltbook, which is an AI or a social media for AIs, which I think is a little bit fake, but it's pretty wild to look at some of the stuff happening over there. And then there is a thing, and I will admit I signed up for it, where AIs, agents, whatever you want to call them, can rent human beings to do stuff. So that's pretty wild that we are now we went from people using AIs to AIs using humans to get stuff done in a matter of just a couple of years. So keep you posted on that one. Anywho, Jerome, thank you very much. And again, stay tuned. I don't know when, but I know it's going to be kind of last minute-y. So just try to be aware, email, whatever. Whenever we end up doing some NFL draft stuff, live streams, whatever, it's probably going to be relatively last minute. So just keep your eyes open on that. It's very difficult to be like, well, I guess it's not difficult. I just don't do it. Because I never know what's going on. I try to set things up, and then, well, you ready to go? Like, what's going on? Yeah, we're leaving. Or I need you to do this, or whatever. I don't know. It's easier to just notice, oh, I have nothing to do for the next hour. That's crazy. Maybe I should do this. Anywho, news and notes, not a ton NFL-wide, but the Giants are hiring former Chiefs and Chiefs offensive coordinator, Bears head coach, to be their offensive coordinator, and that is Matt Nagy. So let me say that in a way that isn't stupid. The Giants are hiring Matt Nagy to be their offensive coordinator. I also thought this whole Roger Goodell thing, talking about how much everybody loves everything. Everybody I talk to, they say they love everything. Zach Tom quote tweeted that with laughing hysterically face. Benjamin Albright quote tweeted it and said, players I talk to hate the travel schedule, the loss of pay due to overseas taxes, and loss of a home game. So again, it just kind of reinforces what I had thought, that he sounds to me, talking about Roger Goodell, like a person who doesn't actually, even though he's claiming he's talking to the players, maybe he's talking to like union reps during some kind of a meeting or whatever. He sounds to me like a guy who talks to like his friggin' second in command and is like, so what are the players saying about this international travel, Leroy? And Leroy's like, oh, sir, they love it. They are so happy to be in your presence. It's such a phony freaking thing. They don't like it. They hate it. They don't like traveling to go play football in another country, all tired and groggy and stupid. They tell me they love it. Anywho, I thought I would mention this since it is NFC North related. Over at The Athletic, Diana Rossini and Alec Lewis, presumably Alec Lewis is a Vikings beat writer for them, wrote an article, Inside the Stunning Dismissal of Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. This is wild. Might be a slight exaggeration, but there's some fun little notes in here. A couple of things that were in there. Out of 28 draft picks over 4 years, only 4 are considered surefire starters. His first draft, 2022, is particularly criticized for trading down to select Lewis Cine, who is now released, and passing an all-pro safety Kyle Hamilton. The decision to let Sam Darnold walk after a 14-win season proved disastrous. Darnold is currently leading the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. The Vikings missed the playoffs due to J.J. McCarthy's injury history, I guess, and lack of readiness. Adofo-Mensah is also criticized for not being able to secure veterans like Daniel Jones or Aaron Rodgers, who reportedly had interest with a team-friendly deal, leaving the team with a struggling Carson Wentz and a lack of trust in the position. His Wall Street background and analytical approach reportedly caused tension with traditional football staff. Coaches grew frustrated with his perceived lack of scouting experience and the division over personnel decisions. The other thing, and we kind of mentioned this, the weird handling of his firing, it occurred 26 days after the season ended. Adofo-Mensah was actively scouting the Senior Bowl, and his staff and agents and everybody else were kind of the impression that window had passed, meaning we survived, we're not getting fired, and then boom, they got fired. I guess another thing that kind of rubbed people the wrong way is that Kwesi took a 2-week paternity leave during training camp in 2023. Ownership, I guess, publicly said, oh yeah, we love this, because of course they're not going to say the opposite of that. But apparently it was met with disbelief by some of his league peers, highlighting the rigid football-first culture. But I thought maybe the more interesting aspect of this, because it's what's left in Minnesota, is the fact that the J.J. McCarthy thing is apparently more of a Kevin O'Connell problem than a Adofo-Mensah problem. Alec Lewis in the article says that to absolve Kevin O'Connell from any and all influence would not be accurate. Apparently, the coaching staff had increasingly, increased their own role in the scouting staff, which I don't know how you do that, how you have the power to decide you're going to be a bigger piece of everything, but I guess they did. And they did it to guard against Adofo-Mensah's poor 2022 draft. Apparently, they thought he was so bad, they decided they were going to take a larger role in scouting and free agency and all that stuff. Article explicitly states that Kevin O'Connell and the coaching staff had a major influence on significant personnel decisions. The coaches' priorities often dictated how the draft board was organized and which players were targeted. Major part of the article is the disagreement over Sam Darnold and Aaron Rodgers. While Adofo-Mensah is blamed for the outcome, the article reveals that the decision to prioritize J.J. McCarthy's development over keeping a proven veteran like Darnold was a quote-unquote group choice, one that O'Connell was intimately involved in. Which is also funny because the initial impression, I guess, if not outwardly said, the initial impression when this all kind of fell apart was that Kevin O'Connell was upset with the situation he was left with, that he didn't like that J.J. McCarthy was being kind of forced into this role when he wasn't ready. This is a very different thing that's being said here. Now, it ultimately may not matter because ideally, from their perspective, you go out and get a GM that can actually do his job and the coaches can go back to being coaches. But so long as the coaching staff decides that it's going to be a major portion of what happens moving forward, which could be the situation now because they're not hiring a GM, there's no reason to believe that they're going to do a good job in this because coaches are not good GMs, right? They're just not. I know we played that game when Rodgers was, we would be better off with Rodgers' input. I think you should take Rodgers' input. No, we shouldn't, because players don't know a damn thing about scouting. They think they do, because they're players and they feel like, of course I would. I have an intimate knowledge of all these different things, and I know how to play, and I know all these things and everything else. And coaches feel the same way. We know how to coach players. We know what we're looking at. We know it's a different job. You throw the ball. You teach him how to throw the ball. I find people that can throw the ball. They're different jobs, okay? I'm sure a GM has intimate knowledge of how the mechanics of football work and all these different things. They have to understand scheme. They have to understand all these things in order to do their job well. That doesn't mean they would make good coaches. And it definitely doesn't mean they would make good players just because they know how to do it. They are different jobs. Anyways, next up was the part where I was going to say, Rob Demovsky reporting after signing his contract extension last week, Packers GM Brian Gutekunst will speak to the media on Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. The only reason I'm repeating that is because I want to elaborate on that a touch. First of all, I do think that this is a great opportunity. A lot of pressure on the media folk to see what you can get out of him. We haven't heard from people in a long time. A lot of things have happened, and we may not hear from them again for quite a long time until, the combine or something. So, kind of a lot of pressure to make sure we squeeze as much data out of him as we can. We'll hear from presumably LaFleur and maybe Gannon. I don't know what the schedule is, but there's a real good opportunity here to get some data. There's also some things that I feel like maybe we don't need to ask. The one and only Michael Rodney, who is I don't know if you can if he's like the unofficial leader of the sort of negative fan group. He needs to start a podcast or something, man, because he would have, I feel like, a really big following. I mean, the negative fans need a voice, and I wish I could be that for you. I feel like sometimes I can represent you guys, but I'm kind of swerving in and out of that lane. Genuinely, you do, and I'm very tempted to just start an AI podcast with just like an angry voice, to be determined. We'll see if we can make that work. But he's up there along with a couple other people. But he feels like the most like sports reportery as opposed to just being like an angry commenter. He's been writing about the Packers since the 80s, so he's got that whole moniker thing going on. But here's what he said. Ask Gutekunst. Number 1, how could you trade Kenny Clark in August and go all season without a starting caliber nose tackle? Now, maybe this is me being unfair, but I feel as though there is a way of viewing things that can only be described as you're being completely unfair because you've predetermined you don't like the guy. Because I just don't genuinely understand the point of view of some. So for example, I have several questions about this question. Number 1, I think it's somewhat self-explanatory how you could trade Kenny Clark without, and we'll assume the second part of the thing is true and just we'll grant all of it. How could you trade Kenny Clark? I feel like if we just elaborate on that to include the part about why he was traded or who he was traded for, the question kind of answers itself. Can any of you out there, we'll treat this like a little kindergarten, like a little Barney segment or something. Do you guys know the answer? Can you find it? Yay, it's a square. You're so good. How could you trade Kenny Clark in August and go all season without a starting caliber nose tackle? Well, again, if we just add the part where we traded him for Micah Parsons, I don't know how we don't understand. I think we can go without asking that one. I feel like, in fact, maybe what we should do is Michael Rodney should be given a press pass and go ask that question. Because there has never been an easier spike, an easier setup to have a ball spike directly in your face than that question. When the answer to that question is, we got Micah Parsons in that trade. That's the answer. Now, again, the assumption is, yeah, but you still didn't go out and get a starting caliber nose tackle because, again, what the negative fans like to do is pretend that there is a grocery store with infinite money. It's like the Poly Market store out in New York that apparently they're opening. That's just a free grocery store, which, by the way, is also a hilarious thing because even that, I think, is in and of itself a fantasy where not only is it free, but it's always fully stocked with food and it's safe. It's just you bring your children and you go grab fresh produce and you walk out and everything's great. It's the same thing in the NFL. You can just walk into the football player store and find starting caliber nose tackles and walk out. And Gutekunst just decided, no, I don't want to. He had plenty of opportunity. We had lots of money. We had the cap space. We had the means, right? There's the store. There's the available talent. And he just decided not to. And I don't know why he made that decision. That's the way these questions are posed. And I don't like when questions are posed that way because it just assumes a whole lot of things that are not based in reality. It always comes across as like the most brain dead thing in the world. And of course, it is the most brain dead thing in the world if we assume all these fantasy things are true. That you could have just traded for Micah Parsons and then just go replace Kenny Clark right away, which kind of begs the question, why would the Dallas Cowboys make that trade if they could have just gone out and gotten a defensive tackle themselves? I don't understand. Why did they need to make a trade to get Kenny Clark if they could have just gone to the free football player store? Interesting question. Aside from all of that is the last part where he calls Kenny Clark a starting caliber nose tackle. I think that is debatable. The issue that I have with that is that it really depends what you mean by starting caliber nose tackle. The last year that Kenny Clark was in Green Bay, the last time we got to see Kenny Clark, he had a 60 PFF grade, a 58 run defense grade, a 63 pass rush grade, 34 pressures, and 1 sack on 435 attempts. He really wasn't starting caliber in any category. I mean, if you want to say 60 is baseline average starting caliber, I guess you could. If by starting caliber you basically just mean top 64, you could do that. The problem is, well, for example, if you look at 2024, Kenny Clark was 61st, which puts him barely in the top 64. That is 2 defensive tackles across 32 teams. You need to be top 64. He was barely inside of that. Carl Brooks was 51st. So he was in that category, as is Devontae Wyatt was also in that category. So we had 2. He would have been our number 3 in that group. So again, I don't know what exactly we mean by starting caliber. Beyond that, his ability, he did kind of bounce back a little bit with Dallas, but it was a 67 grade, 53.7 run defense grade, which is appalling, a 51 tackling grade, and then a 72 pass rush grade, which is really the only redeemable part of his game since, I mean, from a very long time ago, pass rush is the only redeemable thing. However, he had 44 pressures on 462 attempts, which is sub 10%, which is not good, and 4 sacks. That's it. He's had 1 season in his entire career with double-digit sacks, and those are PFF sacks, so probably not even then. That was 2023. The last time he had a good run defense grade was 2020. He's had 1 year in the 70s or higher as a run defender since 2019, or since after 2018. And then the third thing that I don't like about, or third or fourth or fifth or whatever number we're on, is, again, this sort of fantasy idea that you can't start the season without some kind of, or with a deficiency of some kind. How can you go all season without a player that is starting caliber, whatever that means? How could you do that? Can I ask you a question? And maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Can you tell me who the starting cornerbacks are for the LA Rams? Do you know who they are? Can you tell me which starting caliber corner for the Rams is your favorite? Which one is the best, do you think? Can you name any? I mean, I know you're a Packer fan, you're not a Rams fan and all that kind of stuff, but, again, I mean, I'm guessing you can tell me one of their receivers, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. I would bet you could name me their quarterback, right? You might even be able to tell me some of their pass rushers like Jared Verse if you thought hard enough, right? The reason I bring it up is because, and this is maybe more important for the second question, but they don't really have any good corners. They have corners. They have 3 corners. The Rams are a very good team with a very good offense and a very good defense, despite the fact that they have deficiencies. Their right tackle is bad. They have 1 good defensive tackle, and after that, not so much. Their linebackers are their corners are and still, they are a very, very good football team. You know why? Because not every team has to be perfect. Teams can have deficiencies and still be really high-quality football teams. That is a thing that can happen. You don't have to solve every single problem on a team in order to be a viable team. Let me ask you about a Super Bowl caliber team. Who is your favorite interior offensive lineman for the Seahawks? They have very good tackles. Charles Cross is a number 9 overall selection. They finally hit on an offensive lineman. His first 2 years were not great, but he's finally panning out. Charles Cross looking pretty good. Then they have Abraham Lucas. I don't know if he's going to stay good, but he had a good year this year, first of his 4 years. So they have good tackles. At left guard, they have Gray Zabel, who they drafted in the first round this year. He ranks 44th out of 80. Not super great. Then they have Jalen Sundell. Jalen Sundell has a 65 grade as a center. Again, it's whatever. I don't know if he undrafted free agent or what he was. And then at right guard, they have Anthony Bradford, who's a 4th round pick. He has a 48 grade. They don't have anyone that is a good interior offensive lineman. They also, as pass rush, basically just have 34-year-old DeMarcus Lawrence and nobody else off the edge. They don't have anybody else. At linebacker, they've got some deficiencies. At corner, obviously, they have a couple really good corners, but they do have a very weak number 3 corner. And for a weakest link position, it's kind of rough. And since we are talking about depth, right? I mean, we're not just saying, well, you can't talk about defensive tackle because Wyatt is good. How can you go into the season with a starting boundary corner in Josh Joby? How could you do that? Well, it doesn't seem to matter. They have an elite defense despite that, do they not? We're running a little long. We'll take a break and we'll pick up where we left off. Let's get to part 2 of his 3-part questions to Brian Gutekunst, because it just piggybacks exactly what we were already talking about. How could you willingly, just the indignation, how could you willingly go into a season with Keyshawn Nixon as CB1, and why sign a corner nickel and move him outside? Now, obviously, I think it's known that that decision was a bad decision. It was. But it was a bad decision before he got moved to the boundary. He wasn't good in the nickel either. It was just a bad pickup. But again, first of all, Keyshawn Nixon and the cornerback room, really not that awful. I mean, if you actually look at our situation, which hasn't been Hobbs all that much. Hobbs has been injured a lot. Our 3 corners are graded 67, 64, and 63. That is above average, and above average. That is essentially the exact same situation the Rams have at corner. It's not a deficiency in any real way whatsoever. It certainly could be better, and you'd hope it to be better, especially at the CB1 spot. You'd like to have that Witherspoon elite player. Obviously, only one team can have the number 1 corner, but it'd be nice to kind of be in the higher up positions there. Could we get a top 20 guy or something? But it just seems like a silly question. Are you required as a GM to have every position have a top 20 player in it? I'll give you a hint. It's impossible for 32 teams to all have top 20 players, especially across all positions. The funny thing is, Gutekunst probably does that better than just about any GM, or just as well as about any GM, if you look at the positions. Do we have a top 20 safety? Yes. Do we have a top 20 linebacker? Yes. Do we have a top 20 edge rusher? Yes. Do we have a top 20 defensive tackle? I'm not sure, but as a pass rusher, yes. Do we have a top 20 offensive tackle? Yes. Do we have a top 20 tight end? Yes. Do we have a top 20 wide receiver? Yes. Do we have a top 20 quarterback? Yes. Do we have a top 20 running back? Yes. The only thing we definitely don't have a top 20 in is corner and guard and center. Interior offensive line and corner. Those are the only positions. And he's going to sit here and fold his arms at the corner position going, how could you dare not have a better corner? I don't know, dude. But again, it's so stupid. I mean, let's look at the Patriots. I haven't looked at them yet. Let's look at the Patriots. Let's see how they doing here. Oh, boy. Where's their top 20 edge rusher? They have Harold Landry, who ranks 43rd, and Clavon Chason, who ranks 80th. How could you go into the season without a starting caliber edge rusher? What are you doing? They don't have a top 20 center. Oh, this is appalling. Barely have a top 20 running back. He ranks 20th. Oh, my Lord. This is horrendous. I mean, they willingly went into the season with Garrett Bradbury as their starting center. I mean, I can't even fathom what we're doing here. Do you see how absurd that is? I'm not saying it's good, and I'm not saying you shouldn't try to improve it, but 32 teams are looking at deficiencies saying that's something we need to improve on. How could you willingly go in with CB1 being Keyshawn Nixon? I don't know. What would you like to have done? Should we have drafted Savone Revel, who is one of the worst corners in football right now and spent half the season injured? Would that have made you happier? Because at least they tried? Or how many free agent corners, by the way, have blown up? There was one good free agent corner, I think, in the entire class, and he was injured half the year for Detroit. But again, even though only one team can get him, it's an appalling failure if the Packers are not that one team, right? For 30 other teams, it's whatever. We don't need to talk about it. But if Gutekunst doesn't get it, it's an appalling failure. His number 3 question to Brian Gutekunst, again, we need to give him a press pass. Are 4-yard punt returns really good enough? Far be it for me to defend our special teams, but Romeo Doubs was our primary punt returner, and he averaged 6.3 yards per return, not 4. Matthew Golden was 4.7. Jaden Reed was 10.5. The only guy that had less than 4 would have been Keyshawn Nixon, who only had 3 punt returns, and he fair caught one of them, and he returned one for 3 yards, is basically what happened. He had 1 return for 3 yards. So, again, I mean, it's the Packers special teams is not good. But what is it that you're saying? Are you saying that the Packers have had no success returning punts because Gutekunst hasn't invested in a punt returner? I am all for trying to find somebody that's better than what we have. But again, Keyshawn was specifically brought in, and he was very good. And even when I made the point that I don't know that he's going to remain as good as he was, and I think he might struggle, there was a lot of pushback. I had people calling in, oh, you're wrong. No, he'll be fine. Everything's great. Christian Watson's dad was on social media talking about it, like, oh, that's absurd. You don't know football. He's going to be a great kick returner. And now suddenly Brian Gutekunst has massively failed for believing in Keyshawn Nixon. Interesting. Because I thought I was alone in that, but now everybody just knew. Everybody always knew that he wasn't going to be good anymore. The fact of the matter is the Packers have invested in special teams, and it hasn't worked out as well as we would have liked it to. And I don't think it's been handled very well by our coaching staff in particular. The fact that they can't decide, Rich Bisaccia here is the main issue, they can't seem to decide who our returners should be. By the end of the season, we're still rotating returners. That's not a GM problem. That's a coaching staff problem. That is a Rich Bisaccia problem. Who's our kick returner? I don't know. In a freaking game, we're going to cycle through different return men because we can't make up our freaking mind who our returners are. No wonder these guys can't get any better. We have absolutely drafted people with experience in these areas. Okay? Their ability to succeed and do it in the NFL is a different question. So, again, the smarmy question of our 4-yard punt returns really good enough? No. Nobody believes that they're good enough. They're not 4-yard returns, by the way. But leaving that aside, of course not. just like a lot of other things that are not good enough. It'd be just as stupid to add, are this many interceptions good enough? Or this many sacks good enough? No. That's why I went out and got Micah Parsons to get the sack numbers up. I didn't expect everyone else to suck and suddenly get worse and Micah Parsons to get hurt halfway through the year. What the hell is your question? I love the comment to that Ivan the Great says, dude, these guys won't ask those real questions. Are these the real questions? Okay, well, maybe. I mean, I'm all for holding their feet to the fire, but not in a completely ridiculous and unfair way. You have to ask fair questions. If you're just going to be aggressive and abrasive for the sake of being aggressive and abrasive because you're just angry, you're not doing any kind of like real journalisming here, all right? That's not like true journalism. That's just kind of being a jagoff because you're an angry fan. If there are questions, even if they're uncomfortable ones, you ask. And I think the media does that. Our local Packers, I know there's a big reputation that they have for not asking the tough questions, but I think that they do. And that's why I think especially Matt LaFleur and them kind of get into these little pissing matches back and forth sometimes. Matt, in particular, doesn't handle questions very well. Even ones that I don't think are meant to be abrasive, he takes as being abrasive. So anyways, again, I think that there are some questions that can be asked. I think, personnel questions are part of it, even though I think that's probably going to be more of a Matt LaFleur thing. I think it's at least... I don't know exactly how you phrase it. I'm not one of those people, but asking the question of have things been, maybe you could ask, have things been all completely settled, and can we assume that guys like Bisaccia are safe, or are you still working through that? Questions like that can because again we're not trying to be abrasive. We're trying to understand better. There are things that we don't know. There are gaps in our understanding, and we want to fill those gaps. And, in order to do that, we kind of also have to ask questions in a way that they're most likely to be answered. I think a lot of times fans want the press to just be argumentative and to just yell at people. Why haven't you fired Rich Bisaccia? He's terrible. Well, that's more of a statement than a question. I mean, I know there was a question embedded in that, but you don't care about the answer based on that. You're essentially just making a statement that he's terrible and that you've done something wrong, and I just want you to... I guess apologize to me for that. And then last thing before we take a break here, I wanted to point to this, and we can zoom in on both of their specific articles and whatnot, but Zach Cruz, writing over at the Packers Wire, says, pair of beat writers predict Packers will release cornerback Nate Hobbs this offseason. Kind of talked about this already. The writing is kind of on the wall. I've already mentioned that assuming it does happen, it is something that I appreciate about Gutekunst. The fact that he's willing to acknowledge mistakes and move on from them rather than what we've seen in the past by other teams as well as the Packers in the past, where we hang on to these things. It's my decision and I stand by it. No, screw that. I messed up. Oh, well, moving on. How can we be better is the only question. Two longtime beat writers for the Green Bay Packers predict the team will eventually release cornerback Nate Hobbs, who has an expensive roster bonus due in March at some point this offseason. ESPN's Rob Demovsky and Sports Illustrated's Bill Huber both believe the Packers will cut ties with Hobbs after just one season. Hobbs, one of the team's prize free agent signings of last year, is due a $6.25 million roster bonus in March on the third day of the new league year. Roster bonuses serve as team options or money-driven decision points. If the team wants the player and contract, they pay the bonus and lock in the future deal for another year. But the only way to not pay it is to release before the trigger point. And so the expectation, obviously, is that prior to that, there's going to be some level of action. Presumably that action will be to release him. Demovsky points to his lack of availability as a primary reason for releasing. Huber highlighted the injuries in 2025 as a hindrance to the Packers knowing if Hobbs can actually play on the perimeter. Expensive and oft injured is a common pathway to getting fired at the NFL level. So, all these things remain to be seen. We shall see how that all plays out, but these are, two of the more in-the-know people who seem to think that that's the direction we're going to go. So, we'll see. I think it makes sense. I think you have to look at the full gamut of possibilities on these things. The same goes for Rashawn Gary. I think most people are very simply looking at it and saying, here's what Rashawn Gary is owed, here's what he's worth, there's too big of a chasm, you shouldn't pay him. Okay, fair enough. Have we considered contract restructuring? Yeah, it doesn't really look like, okay. Have we considered pay cuts? I always come back to this, there was, when we talk about oil and how much we have left. In the 1920s, they said we had 10 to 15 years left. Obviously, that wasn't the case. In the 70s, we had 30 years left. In the 2000s, they talked about peak oil. The problem with all of these things is that the assumption, there is an assumption that what we see in front of us immediately is the only thing that exists and nothing can change. It's economically brain dead. It's not that they're wrong necessarily in the math that they're doing. It's that they're asking the wrong questions. In the 20s, they said we have 10, 15 years left based on the amount of oil being used and the amount of oil that they believed was left. And then they discovered massive oil reserve fields in Texas and the Middle East, and suddenly oil was everywhere. And then we started panicking in the 70s because we were using so much, even with Texas and the Middle East. Oh boy, we only have 30 years left. Until we technologically advance things and learn things like deep water drilling, and then suddenly, oh, never mind, we're good. 2000s, oh boy, oil's going to hit $300 a barrel, we're screwed. What happened? Fracking. Never mind, we're good. So again, it's very similar in other areas. This is why every year we have to hear about how the Packers are going to have to cut half of their team. Why? Well, if you look at their salary cap situation and then look at how much this person is owed, can't afford him anymore, looks like he's getting cut. Okay, have you considered possibly moving on from some other people? You know what I mean? Have you considered restructuring contracts? Have you considered any of these things to possibly get the salary cap in order so that they can afford this person? Because they never go to that guy who's 32 years old and is like $35 million on the cap that is going to be released for basically no dead money that's going to fix the salary cap in like one snap of a finger. No, they don't even look at that. They look at the elite player on the team that is 27 years old who's about to get a bunch of money, and it's like, well, they're going to have to cut that guy. Why? Why would they do that? They never do that, by the way. That's never a thing that has or will ever happen. Well, it has to. It's just math. No, it's only math if you assume every other thing has to stay exactly the same way. And the only variables, or the only allowable variable, is that player. If that was the case, then yes, that player needs to be cut. That's not the only variable. So anyways, I bring that all up to say we'll have to see. Guys like Russ Ball and everybody else, GMs and money guys, they have ways of tweaking things. And so I would at least like to look at the current cap situation and see if there's anything there. If not, there's always the possibility of, restructuring and or price reductions, or just the possibility of releasing and re-signing. They could possibly cut Nate Hobbs because the contract he was signed to was garbage and he's not worth that anymore. And then they work on a new contract. Now, he's not obligated if he decides he wants to go somewhere else, but it's entirely possible he wants to stay here and is willing to negotiate with the Packers, and they offer him a new deal that's much more reasonable for the Packers, and they move on. There's a lot of things that can happen. And I think we have to do a better job of understanding there's a lot that we don't understand, because we get so rigid in our understanding of everything must be this way. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of moving pieces and moving parts here. Take a break. We'll be right back. All right, one of the other big pieces of news that I have not gotten around to yet, Matt Zenitz, National College Football senior reporter, CBS Sports, says the Packers are expected to hire 49ers defensive backs coach Daniel Bullocks, sources tell CBS Sports. The former Nebraska and NFL defensive back worked for San Francisco the last 9 seasons, interviewed for the 49ers defensive coordinator job in 2024. Bill Huber says this would seem to fill the last big spot on the defensive staff. So we brought in the pass game coordinator. Ansley goes bye-bye. We lost our other CB coach. I forget his name. Again, was never massively impressed with the guy, but whatever. And bring in somebody. Listen, in my opinion, I think we've upgraded kind of across the board. We can have a debate about defensive coordinator. Hafley was a very talented guy, very smart guy, good coach, good teacher, all that stuff. I think the reputation for Gannon is a little lower than it should be. We'll see how it goes. But I think the other additions and subtractions, in my opinion, I would prefer the way that it is. Again, I like Ansley. I think we upgraded there. By the way, kudos to Grokpedia. They're getting much better. It used to be that there were like 4 things in there. Now you can find very, a lot deeper stuff like Daniel Bullocks in here. So super pumped for that to continue getting better. But I want to go through a little bit of Mr. Daniel Bullocks, and I want to kind of recap some of the changes we've made and why I'm pretty excited about it. First of all, before we get started, just a very quick update. Nothing is official yet, but it sounds like it's about to happen. So, 42 years old from Chattanooga, Tennessee, played safety in the NFL, played for the Lions for 4 years. He actually has a twin brother that also played in the NFL. He's actually a second-round pick by the Detroit Lions, 40th overall, so he's pretty legit. By the way, another safety. Every single freaking defensive coach we've talked about has been a safety, or at least a DB or DB's coach or something. Most of them have been safeties. Just goes to show, by the way, how cerebral of a position that is. I guess he amassed 210 tackles, 12 for a loss, 8 interceptions over the final 3 seasons. Scouts at the time highlighted him for his physical play style and strong nose for the football, which I appreciate. We talked about how it would be nice to get some of these former players that are kind of hard-nosed, tough guys in here. A lot of the time we haven't gotten them. This seems to be one of those guys. He had a very good Senior Bowl performance, which solidified his reputation as a top safety prospect. So he went through the whole thing. By the way, a reported 4.28 40-yard dash. My goodness. Oh, you know what else is crazy? His twin brother also selected 40th overall in the second round of the 2005 draft. So 1 year apart. In the 2005 draft, the 40th overall pick was Josh Bullocks, who went to the New Orleans Saints. The very next year with the 40th pick, the Lions picked Daniel Bullocks, the twin brother. How freaking crazy. Like a lot of guys, injuries kind of derailed his career, had an ACL injury pretty quick on and continued to have injury issues. But immediately after football, decided to transition into coaching. Again, like a lot of these guys, they don't miss a beat. Just the very next year, they're right into coaching. Started as an assistant coach for Northern Iowa, 2012 to 2014. 2015, he goes to Eastern Michigan as a cornerbacks coach. Under his guidance, the Eagles' pass defense ranked second in the Mid-American Conference. And then the next year, he jumps to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Bullocks joins the NFL in 2016. He was assistant defensive backs coach for the Jaguars. He assisted defensive backs coach Dwayne Walker during a rebuilding phase for franchise under head coach Gus Bradley. He helped develop guys like Jalen Ramsey, who was the 5th overall pick in the 2016 NFL draft when he got there. Jaguars defense at that time ranked 3rd in the NFL for fewest yards allowed per pass attempt. In 2017, he joined the San Francisco 49ers as an assistant defensive backs coach, working under Robert Saleh. He was promoted to safeties coach in 2019, a position he held through the 2023 season, overseeing the development of key players in the defensive backfield, including their appearance in the Super Bowl, or multiple Super Bowls, where the defense ranked among the league's top units in pass defense and takeaways. His coaching emphasizes coverage discipline and ball skills, helping elevate the group's performance under transitioning defensive coordinators, including DeMeco Ryans in 2021 and Steve Wilkes in 2023. The 49ers have had some really, really good coaches over the years. I mean, our offensive coordinator comes from San Francisco because of what a good job they did on the ground. And you look at guys like DeMeco Ryans, one of the best defensive minds out there, Robert Saleh. I mean, these guys are legit when it comes to defense. And he was able to coach under these guys. In 2024, he advanced to defensive pass game specialist and defensive backs coach, entering his 9th season with the organization in 2025. Notable player developments under his guidance include Hufanga, who emerged as an All-Pro selection in 2022, and cornerback Tarvarius Moore, who in 2019 achieved career highs in tackles and interceptions, as well as several other guys who got some Pro Bowl nods. And so presumably that's where a lot of this is coming from. It's going to come from that Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryan, Steve Wilkes type of defensive philosophy. Now, again, his ultimate job is to employ the defensive Rich Gannon, but that's kind of the flavoring, the seasoning you're going to get on top. And so again, just a quick recap. So obviously defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley, Jonathan Gannon, you can have that discussion. And I think most people would lean on the side of Jeff Hafley, and I think that that's fine. It remains to be seen. I am absolutely warming up to Gannon and some of that. I still plan on, by the way, digging into my thoughts on Gannon and particularly how that's going to help. I've been slowly gathering things, but again, there's a lot going on, a lot to talk about. But looking at Gannon and how I think he can benefit our defense, I already talked a little bit about that, but specifically as it pertains to our pass rush and Micah Parsons. But then you look at Derek Ansley and Bobby Babbage, and what do you have in that situation? You have, in a very, I guess, kind of a lazy analysis, but it does get me excited. Derek Ansley, I was excited about him because he's a former defensive coordinator. He's a guy that is overqualified, as I have been putting it. And we replaced him with a guy that's the exact same thing, except he was a successful defensive coordinator, unlike Ansley. And he comes from a successful franchise, unlike Derek Ansley. Certainly more successful anyways. Derek Ansley, I believe, came from the Chargers. And so everything you would like about Derek Ansley, I think, is improved with Bobby Babbage. Babbage also is a very exciting coach, vocal type of guy. I mean, he is one of those guys. I joke about Sam Seefus and Jonathan Gannon and whatnot, but Babbage, I think, brings that level of intensity with him. Then you look at Ryan Downard, who is kind of the underneath Ansley guy. I don't know much about Downard, obviously, but I've never been massively excited about him. Daniel Bullocks, again, I think is a better option than Ryan Downard is. I would, if you just asked me straight up, who would you rather have, Ansley or Babbage, I would pick Babbage. If you said, who would you rather have, Ryan Downard or Daniel Bullocks, I would take Daniel Bullocks. Daniel Bullocks is exciting. His understanding in coming from San Francisco, where they've done incredible things over there with defense in general. Also the fact that he's been retained over there through multiple different defensive coordinators and doing that job. And the fact that he's a former player and a physical, violent player who is a number 40 overall selection who kind of understands these things. I'm excited about the guy. So I would prefer that situation. Then you look at linebackers coach, and look, if we were still talking about Campanile, it wouldn't even be close. Campanile would be the guy. But you talk about Sean Duggan and the fact that our linebackers took a frickin' nosedive. Again, I don't know much about Sean Duggan, but I was never excited about him, and I was borderline upset with the situation. Now, Sam Seefus does not inspire a lot of confidence in the fact of him just kind of looking and sounding like a dork, if we're being honest. But that's, if you dig a little bit deeper, and if you look at his accomplishments and what he was as a defensive coordinator and the things that he's done, specifically the harmony that he'll have with Jonathan Gannon. If you just asked me right now, if I could snap my fingers and put Sean Duggan back in that spot or allow Sam Seefus to be our linebackers coach, I would choose Sam Seefus. So, I mean, I think Jeff Hafley assembled a dream team. I loved Hafley and I loved the team that he built. I think I like our current situation better. It all hinges on Gannon. I mean, if he's bad, the whole thing's bad, and this was a disaster. But I think legitimately we have assembled a slightly better staff than what is one of the best staffs I have seen, and that assumes Covington is going to stay right where he is, which I think is fantastic. That was one of the things that I had mentioned. If you're going to get a Gannon or something like that, it would be great because a lot of these guys are DB guys, to have a Covington to kind of handle that defensive front. Now, Covington, similarly, the defensive line didn't exactly perform, but he's not going to be implementing Jeff Hafley's scheme. He's going to be implementing Jonathan Gannon's. And so the point is, I need a guy that is good with the defensive line to the point that you can communicate what I need to them. Now, maybe it was just his fault and Hafley was brilliant, but this guy sucks at defensive line stuff or whatever, but I don't think so. I think that the scheme kind of broke when we lost Micah Parsons. I think everything fell apart. So, overall, I am extremely excited. Again, we have to see how this Gannon thing goes. I don't really know. But there are little bits and pieces that get me extremely excited about what he's going to bring to this situation. I also think if you think about it, what we were promised with Jeff Hafley, we didn't really get. And a lot of that is because we didn't have the personnel to do it. So I don't know that we even can run a Jeff Hafley defense, honestly. And so if you just look at it and say, okay, based on the personnel, based on the fact that we're kind of weak in the cornerback position, a little bit stronger at safety and pass rush, would you rather have Gannon or Hafley? I think the answer is Gannon, and I don't know that it's particularly close. And again, that's removing who's the better coach, who's the better communicator, who's the better motivator, leader, all that stuff. It's removing that and just looking at schematically, which one makes more sense. I don't know how you don't say Gannon. Just saying. So I'm excited for what can be. I don't know what will be. Obviously, we have every right to be skeptical. The very thought of us having some kind of a top 10, top 5 elite defense it feels like, you might as well say, are we going to win the Super Bowl this year or the next 2 years in a row and go on some kind of a dynastic run or something? It's like, of course not. I mean, it's possible, but the odds are astronomical. It's just not what we're known for. It's not what we do here. But I'm gonna remain optimistic that assuming we get guys back and can be healthier than we were last year, that this is going to be a very impressive defense. And if what we saw last year from the offense when we were healthy is any indication of what we're going to have, I mean, I really think the Packers healthy will be a very good team. Now, to be fair, I said that about the Lions too. And they came back. They did have injury issues again, but they just were not the same team. Now, we didn't lose Ben Johnson over here, but things are different from year to year. We'll see how it goes. Anywho, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate all of you. Make sure you get your calls in to Packernet After Dark, 608-501-0718. If you wouldn't mind, do me a favor, check out our new NFL Draft show. I'm going to go record that immediately after I get done with this. The show is called Draft Room. It'll be right on this feed. All you got to do is click on it if you're interested, or don't if you're not. But we also have a phone number for that show as well. It is 608-561-3243 is the phone number if you're interested in calling in for some NFL draft stuff. We're not going to have 2 shows for the draft. It'll just be one, so the calls will be incorporated into that show. The plan is, for right now, to start going positionally through some stuff. So for now, as well as the next several days, with some mock drafts and whatnot mixed in, the plan will be to go position by position. We'll probably start with quarterback, which I know is not the most exciting to Packer fans, although we will be talking about some Malik-type replacements. We're going to get to corner. We're going to get to defensive tackle. We're going to get to all that stuff and maybe some fits, all right? Anywho, you all have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.